So we are live. We won't start any real discussion until we get 5 or 6 people in, if that's all right with y'all.
That works.
Works for me.
Tiffany, I like your barrel head that's like your coaster.
Thank you. That's where I got the idea from, actually. This is the first time I've had the blend since Friday.
No.
I try to just let it sit and kind of mingle together.
How's it doing?
Holy crap. It's so different. Now granted, I'm at the end of this bottle of the hazmat pick. So I just poured a little bit in there to compare it. But we all joked about it around the table. That 9-year, like it had so much cherry, like deep dark cherry. It was like Stag Killer. But holy wow.
Let me see if it's better this way.
There's so much fruit on that one.
And the blend?
On the new blend, yeah. Yeah, I think that's what got us all so excited.
I assume that'd should be the age of that one. Because that's the older that's giving you that nose.
Yeah, that one I think was more than 9 years.
More than 9 years. Wow.
Don, can you hear her?
I can.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Awesome.
She was chatting about the blend. That's why I didn't know if you could.
No, I'm preoccupied with
I know.
trying to figure out how to make this work. I can't figure out how to go like full screen on my phone.
It looks good on our end, but you're probably having a hard time seeing us, I bet.
Well, it's in Safari, and it's only showing me like.
If you go down to the bottom corner where Tiffany is, there should be like a little square you could.
Let me see if I go this way again for a second. I am not seeing a square.
If you've got a laptop with a camera on it, that works pretty well too. I don't know if you've got that.
Yeah, this will work.
Okay.
We'll just be very tiny.
Well, we've got a
few
people
tiny.
in, so.
So you already got some distro questions. You see that?
First things first, right? So we do have some people on now. We've got 6 people watching and already getting some chatter. So if you guys are good, then I'll start the conversation. You good with that, Don?
Yes, sir. Well, that didn't work.
I'm sorry. You still playing with your camera there, huh?
It's okay. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, so I see Greg, Seth, Joanna's here. Thank y'all for joining us. Looks like we've got 9 people, so they're starting to come in. I guess first and foremost, I just want to thank you guys. I mean, it's later on y'all's end than it is mine, so you guys are an hour ahead of me. So I appreciate y'all. After a long day doing this, I feel like we get more interaction from people later in the evening. They've kind of wind down and done dinner and whatnot, and they can tune in. So, the only reason I really like doing this is to share the story of the distillery or the brand that we're interviewing. And so that's really all I want to do tonight, is for me to learn more than what I've already learned from Tiffany, which may be everything. She and I've talked about y'all a pretty good bit, but the people that I've shared your juice with, like, this was the first one I got from Tiffany, and I've drank a lot of that, but I've shared a ton of it, and thankful to have a backup. But I've tried the rye, I've tried the Big Winston, and a fan of both, and just really curious about your brand and just knowing everything that I can know about it. So no trick questions or anything tonight. Just feel free to share what you want. If I ask anything that's over the line, then just give me the nod, and we'll move on to the next question. But I guess first and foremost, Natalie, you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background with the brand, and we'll talk with Don a little bit as well, and then we'll also talk with Tiffany some and how she got to meet you guys, and how she come about doing her first pick with you and now our second. And but tell us a little bit about yourself.
We've enjoyed having Tiffany come to visit. I'm Natalie. My sister Anna and I guess technically run the distillery, though I think it runs us. It was started about 10.5 years ago by our father, John Vergakis, and his good friend, Nick Dumas. And they both, one came out of the restaurant business, the other came out of the wine and beer business, and knew that if you cut any corners, it always showed in the final product. So we grind all our own grain. We all of our barrels are 12 to 24 month air dried barrels, full size barrels. And as you had mentioned earlier, you and I were talking, all of our products are quite old. We weren't, it was tough to watch products getting 2, 3, 4 years old, but we knew if we released them too early, they just wouldn't be where we wanted them to be. So now we have a great stock of older products, ryes, bourbons, and some rums. And with Don's guidance, we continue to make great things. Currently, we are just in North and South Carolina. We're going to do one release out of Texas, and then we are looking to the DC, Maryland area, and potentially own line with a partner. More to come on that. But so that maybe it'll go further, but right now you can only find us in North Carolina and South Carolina.
Nice. So Don, how did you come about getting with Broad Branch, and what's your background prior?
So yeah, I worked in restaurants for years and played rock and roll. I had probably a month left in me at restaurants. I'd done it way too long, and I got a call from the distiller. And we had been friends for years, and he said, they're looking to hire somebody, get over here. And I dropped everything and headed over.
Okay.
I met John that day, and just started learning. John had a real way of, he would let you make mistakes. And he always said everybody makes mistakes, but it's oftentimes how you learn. And early on, as we were learning the ropes of distilling, he would let us try different things, let us try different barrels. We ordered barrels from a number of places, and got those running. And years later, John was no slouch. He knew what he was doing. And years later, we have, barrels that contain the same juice. Some of the barrels were identical. Some were from other companies, different char levels, different toasts, these wave staves. And, in time, as those came of age, we had this option. We could go through and try the different barrels and decide what we thought made the whiskey that we wanted to make. And, it was that attitude that allowed us to learn the way we did, and basically to make the products we do today.
Right on. I tell people that all the time. Like I had a guy that was older than me that came in, and I was having to help, train him in the role. And he gets so frustrated at making mistakes, and he's like, I'm sick of making mistakes. And I was like, there's one way not to make a mistake. Sit over there and don't do anything. Turn your computer off. Don't do your job. You won't make any mistakes. But if you're going to make an effort, you're going to make a mistake, and you just have to learn from it, right? And be okay with it. So I think that's awesome that he had that mindset.
Oh, he did. This was about this. It'll be 10 years this year that I've been with Broad Branch.
Oh, nice.
And I have to say, it's just a great place to work. Everybody gets along. Natalie and Anna are supportive, and John always was as well. So I'm pretty happy.
For sure.
We have a great team.
Tiffany, I don't know that I remember how you came about learning about Broad Branch. How did you learn about them and get associated with them in the beginning?
Well, I mean, learning about them. So I'm in a nationwide club called the Bourbon Thieves, and they're, most of the founders are in North Carolina and the Charlotte area. So because of that, like they've always been great about supporting like local North Carolina distilleries. Bourbon Thieves did. Natalie, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but Bourbon Thieves did the first ever single barrel pick. It was the Raw Fidelity. This one was 4 years old, but if I remember correctly, this was the first ever barrel pick to be done. So that was how I learned. There's my big Winston coin crashing. That's how I learned about Broad Branch. And in fact, we were doing like an all-day thing with North Carolina distilleries, and I didn't get to make the trip because it was senior day for basketball. So I didn't actually go visit them on site until last summer. I went with my buddy Matt from Whiskey and Whitetails. I had given him a bottle to try, and then he wanted to go up and check him out because he's kind of from that area. And so I went up with him, and then 2 weeks later, we were actually there with Michelle from Heritage picking a barrel. And we all know, like, that was the day I accidentally took home a barrel. So didn't plan to take home a barrel. Didn't go with the intention of taking home my own barrel that day, but it happened. So
it's kind of like going and looking at puppies, right? You don't go look at puppies.
Yeah. We're both a sucker for puppies, so we know that.
Yeah, for sure. So Walker was asking where you guys sourcing your barrels from, and is it one mash bill? And so he's saying bourbon only, or any rye or wheated. So there is some rye, and there's the bourbon. Are there any wheated?
Yes, they're in the queue.
They were an
somewhere
accident.
They're in the middle of a bunch of barrels in the back.
Got it.
So our bourbon is an ultra low rye recipe. We use white corn, which is often difficult to source. Not a lot of farmers grow white corn. It is approximately 6% rye, 8% barley, 86% corn. I think I am 1 point off on one of those, but it's called Big Winston. And when we first released it, I think the idea was a public friendly release. And if I'm not mistaken, it was in the 80s, 80 proof. Shortly after that, we started to get involved with whiskey clubs and started our own whiskey club. And it became apparent pretty quickly, well, not only because of this, but that whiskey needs to be at higher proofs, 90 minimum probably. We tend not to go below 100 typically. Our rye is 100% Washington State rye. We source our corn and our malt from North Carolina. And if this rye grown in North Carolina was the same end result as when it's grown in Washington State, we would grow this in North Carolina as well. But there is something magic and something very different that happens to this rye when it's grown in Washington State. That product, our standard Big Winston bottled and bond small batch, won double gold at the San Francisco World Spirits. I believe it was 2023.
Nice.
We also released a single malt last year, excuse me. And it was an experiment. We had some extra malt one year and decided we were going to go ahead and give it a try. If you ever come for a tour, I can show you some fun stuff associated with that fermentation. But it was aged in New American oak, and it's literally just your standard. It's the foundation malt from Epiphany Malt, which is where we source our malt. Other than that, we do special releases. We do a bundle at the end of the year that include a cask strength rendition of that rye, an anniversary edition of that rye, which this year is 11 years.
Oh, nice.
We do we do typically a cask finished bourbon, and this year we're going to include a cask finished rye. And what else do we do on the bourbon side? We do an anniversary bourbon each year, but it's a number of years behind the rye.
Okay.
It'll be 9 years.
So
Yeah.
the bourbon,
Yeah.
that's, it's a things get old much more quickly than you would imagine. It really seems like things fly by when you work at a distillery.
Well, that's
Once
good,
it's
because I can only
finally
imagine
ready.
patience. I would think patience is a virtue in it, right? Because you
Oh.
make it and you just want to see what it's going to turn out like, and you've got to wait 4, 6, 8 years.
100%. People always talk about, your mash bill and what kind of barrels you use, and how you ferment, what yeast you use, and all that. But the thing that makes whiskey delicious is patience. That is what patience tastes like.
Well, and we were talking earlier about the different releases and the different proofs, and obviously the Big Winston is my big favorite, and 141 proof just doesn't seem accurate. Like, it does not drink 141 proof. It has the flavor and the concentration of 141 proof, but the ethanol, the burn, it doesn't light you up like a hazmat. You would think a hazmat would. It's just a flavor bomb. And I would love to know, and Michelle was telling us a little bit about your methods and how methodical you were with cutting heads and tails, and how long of a duration it takes you to get the process. And it sounded like that's what you guys attributed to it being so approachable at 141 proof. Is that the case, or is there something else going on there? Like, how in the world am I drinking 141 proof like it?
So I think I may have confused Michelle a bit. A typical spirit run takes about 16 hours.
Okay.
And what we do is we'll run it halfway the first day, and then the final half the second day. So what that means is that our cuts are made on day one. The head cuts are made on day one.
Okay.
The tails cuts are made on day two. And then day three, we kind of do a fractional cut, so that we use 5-gallon buckets once we hit our mark, and we'll do 4 of those. So basically we have 20 gallons that we need to evaluate on day 3 when the air is kind of clear.
Okay.
And so it takes us about 3 days. I think we also discussed Nancy Fraley's concept of slow proofing. We don't take the time that she does, but we do apply it. So typically to proof a cistern of spirit, it'll take several weeks, because if you're going from, say, 140 proof down to 90, and you were to add all that water, the science behind it is that all your hydrogen atoms release, and it becomes a free-for-all. If you were to add all the water at once that it would take to get from 140 to 90, as the chemical process kind of like reintegrates, as that spirit once again kind of becomes solid, you're going to get a lot of glitches.
Okay.
If, however, you take, let's say you use that app, because there's an app for that, and it tells you how much water you need to go from 140 to 90. If you divide that, we typically don't go more than 10 proof points at a time.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Then what ends up happening is, as all of those bonds reconnect, it does so in a much more orderly fashion. And the end result is that you have a spirit that is easier to drink. It's not quite as harsh, not quite as sharp. It kind of rounds edges off. Really, honestly, like most of what we do is about balance. A balanced fermentation is another thing. And that's basically you just simply want to make sure that you've converted all your sugars, that they're, single, uh, simple sugars basically, because that's what yeast can eat. And then we even take that same proofing method on this end before it hits barrel. So um, I feel like, a lot of that combined with the cuts that we do make, there's everybody has to decide how to make their own cuts based on the spirit they want to create. Um, I really like full-bodied spirits with long finishes. I like them bold. I like them
It shows.
big. And a great deal of that is how you make your cuts. And then from there, and I need to give credit where credit's due. The yeast do a great deal of the heavy lifting. So the variety yeast we use has a great deal to do with the final product. The barrels on the inside, the end side of this process, they make a huge difference. The air dried staves, as opposed to kiln dried staves, make a huge difference. And it's one of the experiments we got to run with John Fergakis. We had, barrels made from the same company. This would, the one on the left would be your kiln dried. The one on the right would be the air dried. We tried different, durations. So we do 6 months, we do a 12-month, we do an 18-month and a 24-month. And then years later, we got to go through them and see, as these barrels aged essentially side by side with the exact same juice inside, what the result was. So there's nothing particularly special, no voodoo per se. It's literally kind of death by 1,000 cuts. It's each little thing. It adds up to,
Makes sense.
a finished product.
What cooperage are you guys using, or do you use multiple cooperages? I guess you kind of have in this world, don't you?
Thank God not this year. We use the ISC,
Okay.
and we also have in the past used Saint Moreau and Tonnerio. Tonnerio barrels are gorgeous. They cost about $600. But primarily they make wine barrels, and they sand the outside. It's really a work of art. The thing about ISC is sometimes, and maybe the smaller distilleries get the B product. I don't know, but sometimes it looks like perhaps they gave a drunken monkey a machete and said, "Make me a barrel." So on the outside, it's not gorgeous, but we're not really interested in the outside, and what it does on the inside is equivalent to what we were getting from those Tonnerio barrels.
Well, from what I've heard and learned from Seth is that ISC just totally nerds out on their barrels.
They do.
Like they know every intricate detail, and you could take a whiskey in there and let them try it and say, and they'll tell you and evaluate it and say it's a little off here or there. This is what you need, and they can hook you up with the right type of char, toast, whatever, and basically fix your whiskey if need be. Right.
Absolutely.
So I think that says a lot that you guys use them.
Yeah. Well, so one of the they solved a problem for us. So one of the products that we produce, it's one of our more popular products. It's called Frank's Reserve. It's in our core line. Makes killer old fashions. And that spirit, actually, that product, kind of came about, through a series of eventful and uneventful moments. And where we landed was aging about 15 or 16 European oak barrels with the spirit, and about the same with New American Oak ISC, and we would blend. And it's a 3-barrel blend, so we're kind of locked into that, and it doesn't give us a lot of latitude. Like, in other words, we couldn't do a single barrel. If I needed to do a 5-barrel dump, we couldn't do that. So ISC has hybrid barrels. where the staves are New American oak and the heads are European oak. And it's literally the exact proportion that we need. And we started using those. They come online this year, actually. The next batch of Frank's Reserve will be our new hybrid barrels. We've already tried them, and it is the same product. But the cool thing is that now I can do a single barrel. We can let one barrel roll, and now we can have 7-year Franks. Right now it's 3 years. We can do a 6-barrel dump if we want, a 1-barrel dump if we want. It just really kind of opens up a lot of options. And in this industry, you have to be relatively nimble, because you're trying, to bottle and keep product in stock that is needed. And if all of a sudden something happens and the ABC all of a sudden, ships out like a bunch of cases, and you got to jump in there, the more flexible and nimble we can be, the better.
Or Tiffany comes in and buys 3, 4, 5 barrels and doesn't leave anything for anybody else. Tiffany, tell me about the first time you went there and when y'all did your barrel pick, what it was like, because what little bit I've heard just sounds like anybody that goes there to pick a barrel doesn't leave with a barrel.
So, I mean, the first time I went with my buddy Matt, and it's always fun when you get to go, when you're not picking a barrel and you're really just hanging out and getting to know everybody. So, we had chatted, through social media and stuff like that for a while, but when you actually get to meet people in person and you get to start hearing the stories, there was a lot of times Don, Matt, and Joanna were kind of up at the front, and then Natalie, Anna, and I would be at the back talking about something else. And I was like, I'm gonna have to go watch the YouTube just to kind of figure out some of what I missed. But when you get to go visit these craft distilleries, they don't leave anything unturned. You can ask any questions you want. They'll tell you pretty much everything, and if they don't want you to repeat it, they'll just tell you. So it's a very, you can tell, it's a true, family experience there. It's a special product. That was the first visit with Matt. So second visit, I go with Michelle to go pick a barrel. There was, I think there was 8 of us on the pick team, and myself, Joanna, and the Grapevine rep, we just liked a different barrel better. I personally just thought that one was more balanced. The other barrel I thought was a little bit more similar to another profile from another barrel pick from another club, and I was kind of trying to get away from that a little bit. And so at the end, when Michelle picked the other barrel, I was like, you can't say no unless you ask. So I was just like, hey, can I have the other barrel? And she said yes. So, I mean, you don't know until you ask, but I asked. And so I think Michelle just picked back in February, and she went to pick some rye. And same thing, you got 3 barrels, and I think she picked 2 of the 3. So it's hard when you're dealing with such incredible whiskeys. They don't make it easy. Picking a barrel is not easy to start with.
Right.
You're always trying to figure out, okay, who's my audience? Who am I picking for? Am I picking for a club? Am I picking for a store? Do I want a crazy profile? Do I want something that's just going to punch people in the mouth? I like to go in totally blind, because too many people, if they know what they're picking, they'll just pick the highest or the highest proof of the oldest barrel. And I don't want to do that. I just want to pick the best barrel. And so when we went Friday to pick, the first one really blew us away. And the third one, we actually thought was the oldest, but it wasn't. Ended up being the youngest, but it was a hazmat. And we were going back and forth between the characteristics, because I hate to even say this on a live and it start getting out there, but barrel 1, we were like, this is like a stag killer. It had that deep, dark cherry, just punch you in the mouth like stag. And I looked at Joe, because he was on the other end of the table, and I was like, I could tell you which batch stag, that this is so similar to. And so we both wanted to blind it against that. And then we decided, I just said, let me just ask. And so same thing, you don't know until you ask. And I said, what would it work if we blended this together? And so they started working some magic and put them together, and they were like, yeah, we can do this. And it's never been done there before. So the one thing that I think that you don't get this experience when you go to big distilleries, and I'm not trying to knock big distilleries, but when you do go to a small craft distillery, they do have more flexibility to kind of cater to the group and maybe do a little bit more fun things. And you don't get that same ability at these bigger distilleries. So I think a lot of people are missing out by not going and visiting some of these craft distilleries and picking barrels there, because it is just such a unique experience. And you might get a chance to take a barrel home you weren't planning to take home. You might get a chance to make the first ever blend out of a barrel pick. You just don't know what's going to happen.
No, I agree with you. And I think the other thing is that you miss out on some amazing juice when you don't go visit some of these craft distillers. I'm not going to say that every craft distillery out there is making amazing juice, but there's so many that are, and it's not the mainstream stuff. It's stuff that's a little bit easier to obtain. And I just would rather support it. We can grab the mainstream stuff. It seems like any time, right? But something like this, that's just fantastic from beginning to end. Like the first time I ever tried it, I was blown away. And I think I hate that I didn't get a case like Brandon did. So I'm anxious to get your next pick when it comes out.
Honestly, that's the advantage too. So like we were kicking around when we were talking about it, with Anna and Natalie Don, we were going back and forth like, okay, do we blend this? And so once we tasted the blend, we were like, okay, it definitely works. But then we were calculating like, if we only do one barrel, then we have to worry about whether or not, does everybody that wants one get one? And then if you're buying 6 of them, like, does that keep other people from getting it? And we were like, if we do a blend, then more people will be able to get a chance to get this. And so that kind of excited us as well, because, I've been on the other side of not getting something that dropped that I really wanted, and that's really disappointing. And after people have had the hazmat Big Winston's, like, it's really brought a lot of attention to it because it never drinks that hazmat proof. And so you've got something that is deep and complex. I don't know if anybody saw Walker's question come through. I think it was Walker. Maybe it was somebody else. Somebody asked about a double oak. Are you planning to do double oak?
Yes, Seth asked that. I've got it on the screen. I was going to ask Natalie.
Man, if you saw the color on the 7-year, like, how do you even double oak something that already is so deep and so complex and has so many layers and so much color on it? Like, I don't know what would happen. I don't know if you guys have double oaked anything, but Friday we tasted a 9-year, 8-year, and 7-year, and I can't imagine like it going any deeper than that, just because there's already so much there.
It would seem like a waste to me for another barrel. You would have to come out of the original barrel sooner, go into a much lighter or toasted barrel for the second one, but then you've just got the cost of that barrel. And Lord forbid, Don, if you go into a $600 barrel for the second time, like,
yeah, not doing that. But it's odd that you say that, because today I ordered a barrel toasted, medium toast, char 1, so that I could transfer our cask finished bourbon to that barrel. So our cask finish this year will be a double oak. People just kept asking about it over and over again, and so give the people what they want.
So is that something that'll only be available to Big Winston Club members?
No, that'll be open to the public.
Okay, but distillery only, or that gets distributed?
It'll probably be distillery only, but if you are a club member, you have early access.
Okay.
So there are benefits to being.
Well, and maybe, Natalie, is this a good time for you to kind of tell everybody about the Big Winston Club and what it is?
We do. Yes, we have a whiskey club. I think you have one of your coins from either this year or last year, Tiffany. It fits conveniently. Don always has his. It fits conveniently on top of the Glencairn. But being part of the whiskey club is it gives you a couple of things. You can come into the distillery anytime you want. Go in the back with the guys, as long as it's they're not doing something that's unsafe or would put someone in danger, which hopefully it shouldn't. So we have a lot of people that come around. They want to come when we're dumping things, kind of get first taste and first looks at stuff. We have quarterly events. The last one we did at a cocktail bar. The guy's like a cocktail genius, and he went through and kind of built a few different cocktails and walked people through his thought process. We have a club barrel pick each year. Last year was cask strength bourbon. This year it's 117 proof rye.
Oh, the club barrel, yeah.
Yeah. It's great. It's really a different rye. And the club only has access.
It might be 111.
It was at 111. I can't remember, but it's fantastic.
And this year, the club actually chose the barrel. So basically, we did an internal barrel pick.
That was fun.
I mean, I think.
It was. Can I take 1 second and because I failed to mention a really important part of this process, and that is the pot still. I understand why people use column stills. Once you reach a certain once you have a certain demand for your product and you need more product, oftentimes there's no other options. But at the size we are at now, we exclusively use a pot still, and pot stills, in my opinion, simply can't be beat when you're making whiskey or rum.
Are they a lot more methodical than columns? It seems like you could scorch it a lot
columns tend to be more precise because of all the plates and such. So this is more kind of user driven. So we're kind of driving the thing and deciding how fast what the heat, how much heat you're applying, and thus how fast it's coming off the still. Where you make your cuts. That's not really a thing with column stills. If you just give it a try. If you're really into big full bodied whiskeys, rums, look for pot still products. It's pretty amazing.
I'm glad you said that because I guess I didn't realize that. But I mean, if that's what you're using, I'm trusting it because this stuff is amazing. And I don't think for the people that haven't had it, I don't think that words can describe it. Like you have to experience it. And I was nervous with Brandon Green doing the video with me because he's the first person that would love to tell me that I'm an idiot and that what I like is garbage. But he was like, "What's her name? How do I get a hold of her? Like, I need cases on cases. Like, I've got to have it." So
that was awesome. I appreciate that.
And I haven't shared it with anybody yet that didn't come back and say, "How do I get a bottle?" So y'all are definitely doing some special stuff.
And I'll
take a weekend trip to the distillery.
It's coming in the near future.
Listen, he's got this thing called a job, and I've just decided that jobs get in the way of all the fun unless you work for a distillery, right? So
yeah.
But the one thing I would like to call out is, so many people are hesitant to get into rye, and they're like, I don't like rye. And thank God, Anna and Natalie's dad was a rye guy. And so they put down rye early, and their rye is phenomenal. So I think that if you want a rye that drinks like a bourbon, and then the super collider that I got last summer, Don, I don't know if you want to talk about this apple rye super collider, but when you talk about people that are doing something different, something fun, and something that will blow your socks off, like, these ryes that drink like bourbons, I think they're way more approachable and much easier to get people into rye. The ryes we tried when we were there Friday for what was out right now, I mean, everything is fantastic, and it's the same thing. You've got a lot of depth of flavor. You've got a lot of color on it. But the Super Collider, I thought was really cool.
So Super Collider is Washington State rye. The specific Super Collider she's talking about was Washington State rye, co-fermented with Fuji and Honey Crisp apples.
Oh, nice. Honey Crisp, my favorite.
It is. They're really good. Yeah. It is kind of a brandy rye, maybe. TTB had a hard time with it, trying to figure out what exactly we'd done. But I like that. I mean, it's a different experience. And I know everybody's into bourbons. I like bourbons just fine. I'm more of a rye guy, but I also really like things that are different. We have one product called it's in our rye collection, and it's called our Wood Exploration Series. And the way this works, this year is the fourth of a linear series, the last of our original. It is going to be 11 years this year. And it is 100% Washington State rye, It spends the first 6 months of its life in a barrel used to age smoked stout. It's then transferred into what they call an STR barrel. And that, in our case, is a 59-gallon wine barrel that was scraped, retoasted, recharred. And if you've tried our standard rye, it really flips the script. Like when it, basically what happens is it pulls constituents from that smoked stout, thank you, barrel into the STR barrel. And whenever you add constituents that weren't previously there into the chemical process that goes on in that barrel, it can turn things on their head. And this literally changes the mouthfeel as well as like, it's different. I like different.
Is it just in my head, or is this a true thing? Because for me, I find that high rye bourbons and rye whiskeys are just more complex. And there again, maybe that's my lack of knowledge, but that's what I tend to find.
I think you're right. I think that rye just brings something else to the table. There's so many layers to it. And when you pull it fresh from a barrel, you can literally just sit down with it and kind of let the alcohols blow off. And every 3 to 5 minutes or so, if you nose your glass, it's an entirely different profile. It literally kind of, as it's introduced to oxygen for the first time in a number of years, it just starts to peel off. And it's if you're paying attention, you can almost get a good deal of your tasting notes, your aroma notes, just right there. And everything's really prominent. And then of course, once it's fully kind of breathed, then you're back to kind of your traditional, like, working it out.
That's something that even Seth talks about. Like, he would refer to that as like a storyteller type thing. But he's like, if you don't sit with that glass and constantly nose it, you're going to miss those different notes because they're there for a brief blip, right? But
absolutely,
it's so much to appreciate, like, for me, and I don't know, it's like magic making whiskey.
I think that's the difference too, right? The people that are watching this YouTube live right now, those are people that drink storyteller bourbons, right? Those are people that drink storyteller whiskeys. They are the people that they're not drinking to get drunk. They're drinking to sit here and sip and enjoy and be a part of this community. They want to learn. They want to know all the bourbon nerd stuff. And I think that's the difference. I think there's a different group of whiskey drinkers out there right now that are just, soaking things up like sponges in the sense of wanting to learn as much as possible. One thing I've noticed, Don, is I'm a big fan of 100% rye grain bills. So like most ryes that I absolutely love, they're 100% rye. What do you think the difference is from somebody that's doing the bare minimum at 51%? I know 95.5 is a popular one that I do enjoy, but 100% just seems to be different. What do you think it is?
I think it's contrast. So if you have a barley rye and that corn sweetness is there, and then you lay your rye on top of that, that sweetness like lets you know that spiciness is there, right? I thought that having 100% rye, you would have even more of that spicy. Now, part of this is the heirloom variety of rye we use, which is really kind of the only secret we have. We probably have more secrets than that, but like one of the few secrets we have. It is it's just good. I mean, again, credit where credit's due. These rye seeds are phenomenal. And we have tried to have them grown we have had them grown in Pennsylvania and in North Carolina. The thing is that traditionally speaking, they're Canadian rye, right? Your winter desert rye, typically have a hit of mint, where in a Pennsylvania rye or even a North Carolina rye, you would find a hit of dill, right? So kind of right out of the gate, this is kind of a different beast. But I think because it doesn't have that like corn sweetness behind it, what spiciness there isn't it. I don't know how to describe it, but it's not really spicy.
I've
People,
found
like
that
you said,
true.
a rye that.
And
You what
like
now?
you're talking about the quality of grain that you're using. I mean, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? You can't fix it if you don't start with the right thing from the
Oh yeah,
beginning. And whiskey, like whiskey
100%.
is culinary, right? It's just like food. And Tiffany talking about, sitting down and enjoying the whiskey and savoring it as opposed to, I think of it back to food. All of us go through the drive-through and grab something just to fill our belly, but I like to sit down with a good meal and savor it, right? And just enjoy every bite. And that's how I am with whiskey. And that's what I enjoy most about whiskey every night is sitting around and enjoying it. If I can't sit and enjoy the whiskey, I'm not gonna say I don't want to drink it, but I pretty much don't want to
What's the
drink it.
point?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, absolutely 100%. Like the grain you start with is going to define your spirit. It's going to be that first layer of what kind of spirit you're producing. Another thing that we do, and this was John's idea. He did a lot of research before he opened this distillery. Talked to a lot of people. He talked with Dave Pickerel of Maker's Mark, and then he did Whistle Pig until he died. And John decided that we were going to ferment on the grain, and we were going to distill on the grain. And at the very least, what that does is it provides more organic material that can then become part of the chemical process. So, fatty acids, your carboxylic acids, that's what you're going to find in this grain mash that stays with the fermentation and works its way into the distillation. And the collision of carboxylic acids and alcohols produce esters, which are flavor compounds. So I believe part of the reason that our whiskeys are so complex is because we leave the grain through the process.
I'm totally blown away when I talk to distillers like yourself, and I'm not going to say that there are a bunch because there aren't, but it makes me wish I'd paid more attention in chemistry in college and high school.
You and me both.
Throwing out terms and stuff that I understand, but I don't fully understand, right? Or I remember. But it to me, it's just really resonated with me lately that, making whiskey is very similar to cooking, but it's also very similar to baking. And I feel like baking is very precise. Cooking, you can kind of overcome some things. And in whiskey, I don't think you can easily overcome mistakes, but I'm just blown away by the whole magic of it. And I don't think I'd ever try my hand at it. And, people tell me all the time, especially my wife, she's like, you branded yourself brutally honest, but yet you don't say much negative about whiskey at all. And I'm like, I can't. I mean, I can tell you if I don't like the taste, but that doesn't mean that it's not good whiskey. It just means that I don't personally like the taste, but I'm not going to sit here and degrade anybody because there's no way that I could do what they're doing. Heck, I've got a white dog project that I've struggled with, and that's just pouring white dog in a barrel. I didn't do anything, But Natalie, did you ever imagine the brand turning out to what it is?
Oh,
And do you have any clue at where it's going? Because I've got some thoughts.
It's been fun to watch it grow. For sure, when we first started, just being able to only sell sort of an unaged whiskey, and then we had our blueberry whiskey. I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no idea what was going to happen from there to get it to be where it is, has gotten today. It's really been fun to watch the brand grow.
For sure. So Walker was just asking about distribution and online stuff. So Walker, we did work with them some, and they are going online. And I don't know, Natalie, if you want to talk a little bit about that, but I'm excited to see that happening, and I pray that it all goes well because it could be promising.
Yes, we've got, again, right now it's just North Carolina and South Carolina. We are doing one release it's a barrel pick going through Texas. And then we are looking at one of the online distributors, maybe that you've mentioned below. We're trying to work with. We're just not 100% there yet. I don't want to mention yet, but we have been looking for a very long time for an online partner because in North Carolina we can't ship. So we've been wanting to be able to get our stuff out. We had not found the right partner, but it looks like we're getting pretty close with one. So as soon as we do, we'll announce it in social and on our website and how you can get our products.
So several people have asked, and you know, I keep begging you for barrel picks, and I understand supply and demand.
Tiffany.
And the only reason I guess that we're not there yet is because you guys had people way ahead of me before I even come in the picture, and you know what you've got available versus the people that you've got coming. Supply and demand there again. Are there plans to increase production in the future? And obviously, I understand once you do that, we've got to wait another 7 or 8 years before we get to where we want to be. But are you guys looking to grow beyond where you are?
So we've addressed this, and I believe it's 2028. We upped production for a number of years. I think starting in 2028, we were doing, I'm sorry, I don't know how many years prior to that, 6. We started doing basically around 30 barrels of each of the products for a number of years. We've kind of scaled back a little bit because it may have been gung ho and we have no space. And, but yes, there is unfortunately, it's going to be incredibly tight until then. But once we hit 2028, we're kind of in the clear.
I don't think it's a negative thing to not have tons of product just flowing out the door. Like, I think it's good to have a little bit higher demand than what you have supply. That's perfect in economics, right?
Yeah, it is.
Makes Don nervous.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it just is. I'll just say that. You don't have to say it, but I think that's a good thing. And but I think it's great to know that you guys are looking at growing. And it's easy from a consumer standpoint for us to say, you know, you guys got to put out more whiskey. We want more whiskey, but I mean, a lot of people don't understand the amount of capital investment and hiring and everything else that has to go on once you start building additional rick houses and more forklifts and, you know, more distillation equipment and more pot stills and so on and so forth. And it's a big undertaking. And then whiskey is nothing but futures, right? So you start distilling today for 7 years down the road, and none of us know where bourbon or whiskey is going to be at that point in time. So I can appreciate the risk or the concern and even trying to grow beyond where you are.
You know, as a company, traditionally, we don't engage, you know, on a public stage in any sort of like politic. But I will take a moment and say this, that in North Carolina, well, around the country, this game of whiskey, it is the profit margin is so incredibly thin. It's a volume game. In North Carolina, prior to Prohibition, we were one of the stops if you wanted whiskey. Like, we had the railroads, you know, we had the goods. Like, there were over 400 distilleries in North Carolina prior to Prohibition, legal distilleries.
Oh, wow.
And since then, Kentucky took its rightful place. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of Kentucky product. But there's a lot of great product here in North Carolina too. So what I would request, if you're watching this, is contact your legislators and let them know that the North Carolina distilling industry could really use some attention, specifically when it comes to excise tax. In North Carolina currently, the excise tax on a bottle of spirits is 33%. By the time a product is sold from an ABC store, the state has 47%. That's a lot. You know, I believe to be a legislator is to make change, you know, to kind of monitor, to make change, do some things. If you pass that word, if you want more good whiskey in North Carolina, if you want access to more good whiskey in North Carolina, write your legislator. Let them know that, you know, that if they could adjust the excise tax for North Carolina distilleries some way, somehow, that it would change the world.
It'd help us get it out to other states too, because it would free up some
Indeed.
money.
It would. It would
It's
create
very
jobs.
frustrating. And the thing that I'm seeing from the outside is everybody else is making more than the brand makes. You know what I mean? Everybody's got their hand in the pie, and everybody's just racketeering and controlling this thing. And Alabama is the worst. And I'll say it. I don't know what they can do to me for saying it, but I'm constantly saying it because I know several great store owners that would love to put out products at an affordable price to the public, and they can't because they're competing with our ABC. And so the price that they pay for the bottle is maybe 10% less than what ABC's got it for on the shelf, so that by the time he makes his 20% markup on it, it looks like he's trying to knock you over the head, and he's not. He doesn't want to do that. And so every state's different, but every state is controlled in some way that's not favorable to the brand profiting, in my opinion. Like you said, it's a thin market.
The legislators in North Carolina, they're not bad people, and they're not actively trying to hold us down. It literally is just a lack of action. If they would take action in support of our distilling industry, again, that would change the world. That would create jobs. That would allow brands to compete, in states like Kentucky. Right. I mean, when you think of whiskey right now, the names that come to mind: Kentucky, Tennessee, Colorado, Texas. North Carolina is not necessarily in that list, but there are North Carolina distilleries producing product that is just as good as anything coming out of any of those states.
Amen.
And, it literally just needs the support of our legislators.
I think that's it's funny that we talk about, I think anytime we talk about whiskey, whether we're talking about age or whatever it may be, that conversation, whether we say it or not, is relative to Kentucky or Indiana. But then when whiskey was first being made illegally, it was being made in the places like, Virginia, obviously Kentucky as well, but Virginia, North Carolina. And so there are people there. There's family heritages that know how to make good whiskey. And it just really is sad that the competition is not more level across the board for the whole United States.
Yeah.
Well,
we can change this.
We can, and to give another distillery perspective, right? Like, I work for a small distillery in South Carolina. I think a lot of times, like, as whiskey consumers, we always want access to our brands, and I get it. I had shipments show up today. And so we're always saying, like, can you get online? Can you do this? We want more and more. And some of the things that we don't think about as consumers is the extra cost that the distillery incurs to be able to get those products. There's a couple of shipping hubs around the country. DC is an easy one, Texas, New York, California. But then the distillery has to, cover the freight of getting those products to you. And then you're trusting someone to send you the correct products. Like today, I had a shipment show up, supposed to be 2 bottles in there. There was 1 bottle, no email saying it was sold out, nothing like that. The other box was missing half of my stuff. So there's so much stuff that goes into it. I know we always are saying be patient with craft distilleries, be patient with craft distilleries. There's so much that goes into it that, consumers don't see on the back side of things. Like, there's so much work trying to figure out when you're working like North Carolina with a control state versus, South Carolina is not a control state. There's so many more things that go into it when you're trying to figure out how to get online and do everything correctly and not get in trouble. But the biggest thing that I would tell anybody that's listening, no matter where you are, as you're traveling, for the next 6 months, is North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. They may not be huge on your map for bourbon and whiskey, but there's a lot of great distilleries in those 3 states. And if you don't have it, or you're, a lot of people are coming through, going to the beach, to the mountains, like different things like that, I would look up these smaller craft distilleries and I would plan a visit because I think it's worth it. Like, every time, I've never been disappointed.
It is. It absolutely is.
Where a distillery our size can't compete in volume, we can most certainly compete in quality.
And I think that's what it all boils down to, and that's where it's at. For me personally, is like Tiffany and I are saying, we're not over here guzzling whiskey. I'm not going through a 750 like that. I'm not buying 1 or 2 a week, but I want to enjoy it. And that's exactly what I've done sipping on your stuff tonight. Like, I'd rather have that. And it's not a quote unquote dessert whiskey, because it's full flavored and it's got body and depth, but I enjoy it just like I would any type of dessert after a meal. And I could sit there and just enjoy that and not be full and sick afterwards. But that bottle's crushable. I can't imagine. I don't know that I know of another 141 proof bottle that I could just sit there and drink that long. I don't know. My camera won't even focus, but at 141 proof, I could crush that entire bottle just sitting here talking to y'all. I probably would regret it tomorrow, but
let me say something about these hazmats. The way we conduct our process does produce spirits that typically drink lower than the proof would imply. Having said that, this series of hazmats that we've released to clubs and individuals, for that matter, there's been a great deal of luck involved, because on occasion we do run into a barrel that drinks hotter than the proof would imply. I always experience, like, stag is that in my mind. Like, I don't know how they get stag so hot.
That's my thing. Too.
We do. It's just always, like, no matter what the proof, it's so fucking hot. We do run into that as well. We have had a run of, like, particularly good barrels that have reached, over 140 proof. There is no guarantee that is going to always be the case. Again, those barrels they do their magic, and they kind of have a mind of their own. But I would say this, that we typically do have our spirits typically do drink not quite as hot as the proof would imply. I want to say something else too, and you're going to hate me for this, because I'm going to tell you something, and then I'm going to tell you I can't tell you more about this something.
Don't do that.
But I definitely want to stir up a little noise. This year we've got a new product line coming out, and though I can tell you literally nothing about it yet, I will tell you this: that
send me to bed hoping.
For our money, like, we've got a rock star involved on this one. And that's all I can say. Speculate as you will, but Broad Branch has a brand new product line coming out that will be associated with a rock star in the industry. Keep your eyes out.
Well, I can only imagine it's going to be a banger, and that's going to be an exception to the rule, because there are not many celebrity whiskeys out there that I'm fond of. So I hope y'all.
No. It's not a celebrity. It's a celebrity in the industry. In other words,
okay.
Yes, this person is in the whiskey industry.
Okay, I got you.
They're not a celebrity.
Yes.
Well,
no,
I want to jump on what Don said real quick about the hazmat. So, we were just there picking a barrel Friday, and I specifically brought my hazmat pick as a reference point, because there was too much hype around it. And I was like, we need people that haven't tried it to kind of have a baseline. There was a hazmat in the lineup, and we blinded them side by side. And the hazmat in the lineup drank like a hazmat, This one, like you said, Brandon, is crushable. So the two barrels that we blended together, if you're a fan of stag and you love the punch you in your mouth, like, cherry flavor of stag, the barrels we are going to blend together, one is a 9-year, 65 days. One is a 7-year, 196 days. I think it's not exact. I don't know if Don proofed it at all, but it's going to end up somewhere around 137. But it is going to be, in my opinion, more crushable than the hazmat pick was. The hazmat pick had a different flavor profile. This one drinks more like Stag 22A, in my opinion. But it is that, like, just continuous, like, deep, dark cherry, like, holy crap, I don't want to stop drinking this. If you saw me looking like obsessed with this glass the whole time today, like, that's why. Like, that's what's in this glass. It's the blend that we did. And I keep going back to the dry glass, and I was, kind of going through it and comparing the two. So if you're somebody that First, I want to offer this to everybody that's on the live. If you have not personally bought that hazmat that I did or have received a sample of it, send me a message. The last time Natalie and Anna were in town and did a tasting, they gave me the leftover bottle. I have poured it into sample bottles, and I will send you a sample of that. If don't be stingy, only for people that haven't already got it. But if you like that and you're excited too, like we're hoping to at least put half of this blend online. It'll probably be 2 or 3 months down the road from now, but just be watching out, paying attention on social media, because this may be one of the better things I've been excited about in a long time in general. I think you guys are going to be shocked when you taste this. I say it all the time. I said it Friday at the pick, like stop chasing allocated whiskey, because there is good whiskey sitting on the shelf every day right now.
Well, you said 22A just to tease me, so now I've got to know, because that's my favorite stag, being that I'm not a huge fan of Stag Junior or Stag, if you want to call it, but 22A is great in my opinion. But the Old Forester cash drinks are the same way. They're hit or miss, and I don't mind proof if the flavor's there, just like this. And talking about allocated bottles, I got 2 points I want to make. Was in Kentucky last week and way overpaid for a pour of Pappy 20 because I'd had Pappy 15. It was really good. I heard 23 was way over oaked. I knew the 20 was lower in proof. I knew I'd had some pours. We'd done barrel picks that day. So I knew going in what to kind of expect. This glass of water has more flavor than that. And so I don't know if something was done to that particular bottle. I don't know if Pappy 20 is just that weak in flavor. I'm not paying that for a bottle when I could buy cases of this and just thoroughly enjoy it. To the other point, I'm also drinking your Detling, which is a higher proof Detling. It's 116 or so, 116.4, I think. But I drank a Blonde Bros collab from NBC rye at 140. I wanted to blind it with Seth's rye. Seth's rye is like 108, 106, somewhere in there. Sip, go back to Seth's. Could not taste it at all. It totally muted my palate. I've been drinking this through the whole live tonight. I warmed up with the Detling and have been drinking this the whole live, and just went back to the Detling, and it's just as full flavored. Yeah, it's not. It's killed the proof of it, but it's still delicious and full flavored. So even though your stuff's 141 proof, it's not just totally just washing out and muting my palate, which there again blows me away.
That's why I think you guys are going to be excited about this blend, because it's so much flavor. And like Don said, like every stag is so freaking hot. Like some of them are just hot for days for no reason. Mm-hmm. And this one is not like that at all. It is so much flavor, but it is not hot at all.
I'm excited. Hurry up, get them bottled, Don.
We're going as fast as we can, sir. Blame it on the labels. It's the most complicated part of this process.
I can understand.
Or you can blame me this time, since we have to redesign the labels since they've been blended previously.
Costing you money, Don. So you could have just sold me the other barrel, and we'd had the same label. I'm very excited that y'all are doing a blend, though. I think that's going to be phenomenal. Like, if Tiffany says it is, I already know it is. So there's that. I don't think I want to say in public that she's phenomenal, but she is. So
yeah, we agree.
Well, guys, we're a little over an hour. I'm gonna try to respect y'all's time. It's 9:05 your time, so I'm sure each one of y'all are ready to wind down, and you got a full day coming tomorrow. So I definitely appreciate you.
Let me, if you don't mind, I'd like to invite anybody watching to come to the distillery. If you haven't been, stop by. I'm there all the time. You may see Natalie or Anna, Jacob, but you can come in. Our tastings are complimentary. If you find yourself anywhere near Winston-Salem, North Carolina, look us up.
Well, I'm gonna have to have some money when I come there, because I know whatever you've got around that I can get, I'm gonna be buying it. Let's look at these last few notes real quick, and back to your point. I'm hoping July or August frees me up. July, August, September. So if you guys are near Birmingham or coming through Birmingham headed that way, let me know, and let's just plan a trip together. A bunch of us can get together and go have a good time up there, and maybe we can drag Tiffany along with us. Let's see here. Tiffany, thank you for mentioning the Carolinas and Georgia states have small distilleries doing big things. Absolutely. Arn Rose in Georgia is one of my favorite. ASW is another. Tiffany needs this. What did it say? Okay, Tiff. Terry needs this. He's listening. So that's what Sharon said. And then Tina says, I'm excited to try it, Tiffany. I'm sure it'll be amazing. So, and I'm agreeing with that. I'm excited, especially you said 22A. Natalie, you got anything else that you want to say before we let everybody go?
Well, I just want to thank you for having us. This has been wonderful.
Thank y'all.
Yeah. We look forward to you visiting late
Absolutely.
summer.
Hopefully soon. Tiffany keeps telling me I've got to slow down. Heather tells me I've got to slow down, but I'm just chugging right along. We got new wheel bearings in the truck, so let's get it. Tiffany, you got anything else?
No, I mean, obviously, like, we appreciate them taking the time to jump on here. I appreciate you continuing to help highlight these fantastic craft distilleries.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be the fall probably before we get you back towards this way. Is that right?
It's looking like August, September is if I have to be completely honest. I'm hoping July works out to be something, but there's only 2 weeks every month that I can do anything, right? And one of those is 4th of July weekend. So, and I've got to move Riley home from college on one of those weekends. So, and then we got Kentucky Bourbon Fest in August, I think. Is that right? 1st of September into August, somewhere in there. So, yeah, you're right. Probably September.
Yeah, but let's figure something out. I know September's crazy for all the people that go to Kentucky. But let's definitely figure something out, because I think once you get there, it's going to be one of those things like Detling where you're going to have a little like Broad Branch tattoo. So I definitely think we need to get.
We can do that.
Do you do tattoos too, Don?
Yeah, no, you would not want a tattoo for me, but I'm sure we can find somebody to give you a sexy bottle tattoo.
Right. I just want it right in the middle of my lower back right there. So that'd be great.
There you go.
All right, let's see. One last thing. Walker said he can't wait for the pick from Tiffany's and from mine. See, love Broad Branch, what y'all are doing. So that's great. Walker, thank you for sticking with us, man. You mean a lot to me. I appreciate your support. And everybody that tuned in, I thank y'all. Natalie, Tiffany, Don, thank y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good night, guys.
See y'all.
Ciao.